Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We still have a few people trickling in, so we're going to give them another moment or two, and then we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, District to Community, the Healthy Social Media Relationship, featuring our speaker, Dr. Roland Rios, the Director of Technology for Fort Sam Houston Independent School District, all the way down in Texas. Welcome, Dr. Roland.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Before we get too far into it, I'd like to welcome everyone to our Agency to Agency webinar series, where we talk to some of the best and brightest in public sector communication to hear some of their tips, tricks, and best practices on using social media to the best effect. A few housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees are on mute. There will be time for a Q&A following the presentation. If you would like to have any questions answered, you are welcome to use your control panel on the right to submit questions. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the period. And we'll follow up today's email with resources from today's webinar within 48 hours. So a little bit about our agenda today. We're going to start off hearing from Dr. Roland Rios about his experiences as a tech director using social media, followed by Archive Social's Alex Bowman, who will discuss some of the ways that you can archive your social media to keep it safe and secure. And I am Jessica Parker and will be your moderator. A little bit more about our speaker today. Dr. Roland Rios currently serves as the Director of Technology for the Fort Sam Houston Independent School District. During his nearly 30-year career in education, he has been a math teacher, high school assistant principal, and middle and high school principal. He also serves as past president of the Texas Computer Education Association. In 2012, he was named the TCEA Technology Administrator of the Year for Texas and was also named one of TechSmith's 20 to watch in educational technology for the US. When not enjoying his time with his family, Roland enjoys performing community service, taking photos, and playing the guitar and ukulele really badly, from what I'm told.
It's true.
You can follow him on Twitter at Dr. Rios. Welcome, Dr. Rios.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Am I going to get to share my screen now? Are we jumping into that?
Absolutely. We are just going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
All right. There we go.
Fantastic.
Super. Let me just go full screen up here. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you've got a very busy schedule, so I appreciate you taking some time out to hear me share our story of going social with social media through our district. Jessica said they got the best and the brightest and then gave me that glowing introduction. I hope I don't disappoint. It could be downhill from here on out. We'll find out. A little bit about myself. I'm Dr. Roland Rios, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas, and happy to be here to share our story about how we've come to use social media and really rely on social media. Before we get any further, I have to show my gratuitous picture. Anytime I do a presentation, I was telling Jessica, I have to find a way to show pictures of my grandchildren. I try to tie that in somehow to the theme or make it a point. I couldn't do it, so I'm just going to slap some gratuitous pictures of my grandchildren out there. This is my lovely grandson on the left, Braden Daniels. And no, we don't always wear cowboy hats and boots and bandanas in Texas. It was rodeo week last week here in San Antonio, and he was dressed up for daycare. He's our miracle baby. Braden was born at 27 weeks, weighing only 2 pounds, 91 days in the NICU. but he's bouncy, healthy. I mention all that because during his stay in the NICU, my daughter, pictured there, actually started a Facebook page just for Braden's brave adventures, and that was the way we kept our family updated on his progress. Just a very positive use of social media. And then right next to him is my granddaughter, who was just born to my daughter, Ariana, as well, and that is Kinsley Jane. She's about 4 months old now. My daughter is also in instructional technology. She works for a neighboring school district as their instructional technology specialist, and she takes care of all their social media as well. So I guess it kind of runs in the family. So gratuitous pictures of my grandchildren. There you go. A little bit about our district, because I always like to put things in context, just so you'll kind of know, okay, well, that's how big their school is, and that's why they can do this or that, or that's how small their school is, and that's why Dr. Rios has to wear so many hats, etc. Fort Sam Houston Independent School District is a small public school district in San Antonio. We are a public school district, but we are very unique in that we reside entirely on a military installation. Independent school districts throughout the nation, of course, have boundaries, and in order to attend school in that district, you have to live inside those boundaries. Our boundaries are the gates of Fort Sam Houston. Fort Sam Houston is a medical training facility, is the medical training facility for all military medicine. So we have Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. So 99% of our students are military dependents. The only ones that are not are the children of our employees who can apply to come to school here. Given that, there's lots of mobility and lots of deployment. So our children stay with us. Our students are here 2-3 years, sometimes a little bit longer, but on average about 2 to 3 years. And then about a third of our kids will have a parent deployed. I mentioned that in the context of social media because we really rely on social media to share information with parents that are moving to the district, or parents who have moved away and need to get back in touch with us. The kids like to see what their friends are doing. If they move away from Fort Sam, they like to keep up with their friends back here. And so they follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And as their parents are deployed, it's a nice way for mom or dad to see how their kid's soccer team is doing, or how they're doing academically. Some of our academic teams, that we're boasting about on social media, we get that word to the parents through our use of social media. So a very, very unique population. One of our core beliefs is we exist to serve the military child, and social media has played a huge role in that. We proudly serve those who serve. We've had quite a few people come through our gates, and while we are small, we do have one rather large, famous Fort Sam Houston graduate. That is Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille came to school here in 1988. It was long before I got here, but in 1989, Cole High School won the state basketball tournament. Imagine that, 36-0 under Shaquille's leadership as our center. This picture was when we retired his jersey and he came back to visit. He is a large man, I will tell you that, but he's also a very, very nice person. So little plug there for our famous graduate. So let's get right into the social media aspect. I can blab on forever, Jessica, I'm sorry, so I'm going to keep moving here. Let's talk about what I call our BSM days, before social media. I looked at the questions that some of you kind of posed ahead of time, and you're kind of in this boat that we were a few years ago, and it really wasn't that long ago. But when I first became the tech director, it was about 12 years ago. We kind of had a website, but we had no social media. Some of the social media tools we use didn't even exist 12 years ago. But we relied on a lot of what I call antiquated mass communication. Other than our website, we were posting information in the Post newsletter, which is a newspaper they had on post here, emailing parents and that sort of thing. And I knew that we had to get on board with some of the social media outlets that were there at a time, but there was a lot of fear of social media. And many of you mentioned that in your questions that you posed earlier. There was fear from our administrative team district-wide. There was a lot of fear from the teachers, what's going to happen. I'll be honest, I was a little fearful. I really wanted to move forward, but I wasn't sure, is there going to be a lot of negativity? That was another question that people asked. Is how do you deal with the negative comments and that sort of thing? So we had absolutely no presence in social media. And the other thing is that teachers really didn't fully understand the power of social media, just how powerful it could be. And I thought if I could make this successful at the district level, then they will see the power in social media for their classrooms, and hopefully we'll start to see a springboard from there. Again, we're a small school district, so I just wanted to create one account for the district. I wanted one Facebook account and one Twitter account, and we could post stuff from both campuses. Only two campuses here. I failed to mention that earlier. The Fort Sam Houston Elementary School and then Robert G. Cole Middle and High School, a combined um, secondary campus. The other thing that was going on before social media is that other people were telling our story. And I think that's an important thing to bring up. One of the things you asked a lot is how do we get people over the fear of social media? Um, what is there going to be some negative comments? What's going to happen? And the truth is, yeah, you're going to get negative comments. And yes, other people may try to tell your story before you get to it. I was reading a book recently called Social Media, not social media, but Social Media by Jennifer Cassattad. She's an educator who really was talking about this fear of social media and how do we get over it so that our teachers can use it, we allow our students on it, and we reap the benefits, all the wonderful benefits of social media while still being careful about those pitfalls. And I love this quotation: we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. And yes, there's going to be negativity. There's going to be a few bad comments on there, and we can worry about that ad nauseum, or you can just acknowledge the fact that, okay, maybe it's going to happen, but the number of good things that happen through our use of social media, the number of positive things our parents are saying to each other, to the kids on their accomplishments, to us as school leaders, far outweigh the thorns. The roses are far greater than the thorns. So keep that saying in mind as you try to convince the powers that be that the positives are going to far outweigh any of the negatives. So we started slow. I started with just Facebook. You have to have a profile account in order to have a page. So I created a profile account under the name Sam Houston, and then we added the Facebook page for FSHISD. And we started off there. After that, we did a Twitter account, FSHISD. We have since added an additional Facebook page for use in the district. I'll talk about this a little bit more. It's our K-Cub News. That's for our elementary school. They do live morning broadcasts, live newscasts every morning through Facebook. So they're on Facebook Live every morning. We did add an Instagram account. We've had that for a few years. I know there was a question about somebody said they have a Facebook, they have a Twitter. Is it worth getting an Instagram account? I think it is. Unfortunately, I haven't used Instagram as much as I want to, but I'm going to start pushing that a little bit more. So our three biggies are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram kind of comes in a distant third right now. Since then, we've added some third-party tools that allow multiple people to post to our Twitter account. We've got Archive Social to archive our social media. We've got a few other tools that kind of look for threats and that sort of thing. But we are now fully entrenched in our social media presence and want to continue down the same path. So what do we have going right? I think we have a really good following for a district our size. I really honestly can't remember the specific number of followers that we have on Twitter or on Facebook, but we've got quite a few. And so our parents tend to look at Facebook and Twitter before they go to our website, before they check their email. We're just at that time in the growth of social media that our parents they're all on social media. We use a survey tool at the end of every year called Clarity Bright Bites. It's a survey to ask our students, our teachers, and our parents all about the use of technology. And one of the questions is, what social media are you guys using? And our parents have a very high use of Facebook and Twitter. So I think we've got a really good following. The K-Cup News that I mentioned earlier is just going fantastic. We were recording our news broadcasts and then posting them on Facebook. But we found that we were recording them and posting them on YouTube. We were recording our news, elementary news, and posting on YouTube, but our parents weren't finding it because you have to actively go look for that. So K-Cup News started their own Facebook page, and that's where they live stream their morning announcements. They also live stream, using their iPad. They can report at the carnival. They can report at the award ceremony. And our parents are seeing that live broadcast, or at least seeing the recording. And so we've got a lot of momentum going on the K-Cup News Facebook page as well. We're doing a lot of live streaming now throughout the district, and all of that is going directly to Facebook. We have since purchased some devices that will allow us to stream to multiple platforms. So we may start streaming to both Facebook and Twitter at the same time. And so we're either broadcasting through the K-Cup News webpage or FSHISD Facebook page. And again, going back to the fact that a lot of our parents are deployed, may not be at home. They could be deployed for 3 months, some of them up to a year and a half, serving our country overseas. For them to be able to sit and just watch their sixth grader get their citizenship award, that's huge. That's huge to our parents. And so letting them still play that active role is super, super important. And what else is going on? We're telling our story. We're guiding the narrative. Um, you know, Another thing that you tell those powers that be that say, oh, we don't want to get out there. There may be some negative comments. What if people are upset? Guys, if people are upset, they're already upset. And they may not be posting that on your Facebook page. They're posting it on somebody's Facebook page. They're posting it on their own. They're creating their own pages. And all that talk is happening. So why not take the narrative into your own hands? You tell the story. And the last thing that to play off of that is what's going right is our community is playing a vital role. Um, I'm getting messages from my family here. Sorry. So that may be showing up on the screen. Our community plays a vital role in the communication process. So sometimes if there is, I don't want to say a negative comment because we really don't get that many. But let's say I post something and someone says, "Is the game at 7 or 8? You weren't, you forgot to post the time." You're kind of worried, how am I going to monitor all that activity? Well, sometimes before I ever get back to answer a question, our community has already answered that. Or if there's some miscommunication, before I get to it, one of our parents has kind of set the record straight. So we're telling our story, we're guiding that narrative. Our wonderful, supportive parents are helping us guide that narrative as well, which has been fantastic. Here's just a few examples of things that are going right. I wanted to grab a few screenshots for you just to show you a few things that have been really, really fun. Um, our At our board meetings, every now and then, and it's not every month, we offer or we give away what's called the Fort Sam Houston Hero Award. Anyone can nominate someone to be a hero. It's usually a staff member, it could be a support personnel. This was Officer Rogers. He works the guard gate. If you could imagine, to me, if you could imagine one of the very tedious, what could be a boring job, would be to stand at a guard gate, a military installation, and check IDs as people come in and out. And a lot of people just sit there and they check their IDs and kind of wave you on. Officer Rogers stops everybody every morning. He tells everybody he loves them. I'm getting misty-eyed here just thinking about Officer Rogers because he's such a nice, nice guy. Um, Tells every teacher, thank you for what you're doing for the kids. Tells the kids, keep up the good work. So we honored him by giving him this hero award. This one post that we posted on December 12th, 2018 got more reactions than any other post we'd had. And this is actually a screenshot I got from Archive Social. I dug it back up. It got posted, it got reposted. because there were people that had been assigned to Fort Sam Houston that were no longer here. So friends were sending them this post saying, look what they finally did for Officer Rogers. Tons and tons of wonderful messages. This was just a feel-good story that just went on and on. I was getting replies for weeks after we posted that. One example of the positive ways to share your story on social media. Here is another one. This is our KCUB News Twitter page. You'll see the KCUB News. They actually went to the TCEA conference last month, the Texas Computer Education Association conference. Actually, it was earlier this month. It was first week in February, and they were reporting live. So they were recording people and posting this. This is their Facebook page. I apologize. And here they're interviewing Todd Nisloni. He's a Texas educator who has written several books and is gathering quite a following. But all they did, they actually got on their Twitter account and they tweeted out, Todd Nisloni, we hear you are here. We'd love to interview you. He said, great, let's make it happen. Met up with him at the convention center, and they were able to interview Todd Nisloni. They interviewed Jamie Donnelly, who's really high in the virtual reality world. She writes a lot of books. They interviewed 6 or 7 other educators, but it was such a great experience for them and for our followers as well. I think I have one more. Here is our Twitter, our district Twitter account. We recently had a high school team enter a local competition that teamed high schools with local nonprofits, and the high school teams had to put together a media campaign for them. There were 12 awards that night, and we walked away with 2, and we're runners up in another. We had the best original music and best cinematography for our video, but through the power of social media, our community knew about it while we were still there at the awards, because we took the pictures and tweeted them out sitting right there inside the theater. So that instant sharing of information is really, really important to us. So that's what's going right. So there are still some challenges. Yeah, there are things that are going right, but what are our continued challenges? And some of you probably face these if you're already on social media, is how do you get that information from campuses and teachers? You will find with social media, to me, it's almost like if it's more than 24 hours old, that's too late for me to post on Facebook. We've already had another basketball game. We've already had another, student of the week or whatever. So I've got to get that information quickly. So I subscribe to every distribution list in the district. It means I get a lot of email, but I want to make sure if the coaches are sending out information that I get that. I want to make sure if the elementary principal sends something to his staff congratulating some kids, I get that. So I try to get the information from as many avenues as I can. The other is, how do you respond to those comments in a timely manner? That's not always easy. I did mention that sometimes our community beats me to the punch and they can respond, but I do have, I enable all my push notifications on my phone. And so as soon as I see, Miss XYZ has responded or posted a comment on Facebook, I go look at it, much to the chagrin sometimes of my wife as I'm doing it at the dinner table. But if there is a concern or a comment, I want to be able to respond to it as quickly as I can. And if I have to buy time, and I learned this from my days as a principal, I can say that's a valid point. Give me 24 hours and I'll repost and I will post a reply with some more information. At least respond that you will respond later. And the last one, I kind of make mention of that earlier. I want to make sure that we're staying current with social media outlets. Um, you know, 10 years ago, there weren't any parents on Facebook. Now there are no students on Facebook because all the parents are on Facebook. I think the parents now, there's a lot of parents on Twitter. Younger kids are leaving Twitter. So people ask me, are you going to do a Snapchat? Are you going to do a TikTok? I am kind of shying away for that. I want to stick with the basics right now. But you can't ever close your eyes, and who knows if Facebook is going to be here forever. I mean, You know, we thought there was other tools that were going to be here forever, and they're not. So it's just always staying abreast of what's coming out in technology as far as social media goes. Future dreams, real quick. I mentioned this earlier. Expand our use of Instagram. I would like to push, you know, more stuff through Instagram. Continue to look into other forms of social media, and the last two. And Jessica's going to help me out here in a little bit with it with a poll. Is I would really like to see us use our most precious resources more, and that's our students. I would love to get a high school team together of students that are interested in doing this as a living. Now there are social media majors in university. So they could actually major in social media. It used to be just marketing. Now it's a special classification. So I would like to get a team together and have my team of students help me through this process so that we have a team of people doing it. And I was curious, this is me posting a question to you all, is there anyone that's offering any kind of social media class? Do you have a social media club? Is there any structure to that? So I don't know if Jessica's going to post that poll later on, but if we do, let's share that together. And there's your poll now. Does your school or district provide any type of social media at this point? None.
The
So
results
if you
are
get,
coming in.
is the overarching answer no, just let us, you do it, Roland, and then let us know how it goes.
It seems what?
We'll let you start it and share everything with us. That's
Let's see, we got 64%. Guys, go ahead and give your answer. All right. Got a few more people. All right. It's starting to balance out now. So
cool.
it's looking like 8% do actually provide a full course. 8% provided as part of a club or activity. 16% provide it in curriculum in a specific class, and 65% are saying no, we don't do that.
Awesome. Well, it'd be great to get in touch, maybe somehow if we could share information later. For those of you that do have some kind of course in social media, I looked in Texas. I don't know if any of our friends from Texas are joining us today. In Texas, you can apply to offer an innovative course. I didn't see anybody offering an innovative course, so hopefully something will come up. So are you still seeing my screen, Jessica?
We are seeing your screen.
What are you seeing? Because I've lost it.
Messages.
Bunch of messages from my family. There we go. So now I'm in trouble with my family for not answering the messages in a timely manner. What were you doing? And my job. Lastly, just, you know, why did we jump on the archive social bandwagon? I love it. One is it required by law. You need to be archiving these messages, and you can never be too cautious. I always tell people this is, and I love Archive Social. It was so easy to set up. They've been so positive and helpful. It's one of the tools that I have to have that I hope I never have to use, because I hope I'm never called to you know, have to dig up posts because of litigation or anything. But if I do, I've got peace of mind, because I know it's there. And the other part of it is even though the times that I've gone to search, I just showed you the post from Officer Jarvis and his Hero Award. I have used it several times to show staff members that don't have Facebook the positive comments our community has made. I talked to our JROTC instructor one day. I said, "Oh man, Sergeant, you should see all the wonderful things the kids are saying." He said, "Well, I don't have Facebook, Dr. Rios. How am I going to see it?" I said, "I'll print you out a report." So I jumped into Archive Social, downloaded a PDF for him, and he was able to see the printed version of it. So that is our story with social media. I hope that something I said was helpful to somebody out there. And at this point, Jessica, I'll turn it back to you, and we'll facilitate any Q&A we've got.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. There's a lot of great information there. And I do want to share some of the other responses that we got in through the question function. One of our watchers uses Class Intercom as a portal for scheduling, coaching, and moderation. We have others that have a content creation team that creates and shares content. So you guys are all doing a lot of different things. So what we can do is in the follow-up, we will provide Dr. Rios's contact information. So if you would love to get in contact with him directly, he has been kind enough to provide that information. So we can make that connection happen. So moving on a little bit to how you can keep those special social media moments, excuse me. Dr. Rios talked about how he's using Archive Social, but Archive Social isn't the only option. And to tell us a little bit more about record retention and different ways you can do it, we have Alex Bowman.
Hi, thank you, Jessica, and thank you so much, Dr. Rios. That was really enjoyable to hear your story. It echoes a lot of what I hear every day here as the Director of Customer Experience for Archive Social. And what I want to talk about briefly, because we did get some great questions in and we want to make sure that Dr. Rios has a chance to engage with you in the Q&A. But I want to talk about the social media CYA. Of course, we mean cover your agency. And what this means is there are, as schools and school districts, they're publicly funded institutions, and that means you're also subject to the public record laws in your state. All 50 states do have record laws on the books. They vary slightly from place to place. If you're unfamiliar with the ones in your state or how they apply to you, or just need a refresher, you can go to that bit.ly link right there and find resources specific to where you are. But one of the things I've seen in my years with Archive Social is that over time, these public record laws, which already are fairly broadly written to be future-proof and cover all communication, we're starting to see specific language turn up that speaks to social media. As an example, here's one from Massachusetts, electronic records management law. To the extent that social media providers' policies are inconsistent with the statewide records retention schedule, the public entity is obligated to take affirmative steps to retain copies of social media posts. And that really speaks to what I want to cover today. You do have options, and I understand that there are constraints on everyone's schedule in order to manage these records. And so I want to go over what some of those options are with you. And also cover the unique challenges of record retention. A couple things that were mentioned, that Dr. Rios mentioned. One, social media happens in real time, is dynamic. There's always something new happening. And it's not just you who's putting it's not like a website where you put your message up and that's it. It's there. You have the members of the public, students, parents, teachers are able to interact with your messaging, and then they can add, edit, and delete their comments. The other thing that can be challenging is actually searching for historical records. I know that, Dr. Rios, you used examples, what you pulled from your archive, but if you ever go back and actually try to find a post on Facebook, even as little as a week old, it can be challenging to find what you need. What's more, those networks have absolutely no obligation to retain your content for you or help you find it if you need it. And finally, you may not even have access to everything that's out there. If you haven't made it, taken steps to retain it, and content gets edited or deleted, it can be lost forever. Let's see how this can happen. And this can happen even if you or your staff never actually click delete. So here's a sample message on Facebook. We have Sabrina Mickelson has posted a comment wondering about, this is actually for Department of Fish and Wildlife, but wondering about parents of first-time hunters. And what can happen here, there's 3 different levels of this content disappearing. One of the comments in the thread can disappear, which leaves the rest of the thread kind of missing its full context. If you imagine taking out that second comment after the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife responds to Sabrina, suddenly there's a missing content there, and you have a question after that doesn't make sense. Have they ever had accounts before? Not only that, if that same resident deletes the top level comment, it's going to remove everything that's beneath it. And a lot of good information could have been provided there that would have helped another user, and now it's gone. What's worse, if Sabrina, say, decides she's going to quit Facebook altogether, all of this goes away and it can't be recovered. Basically, her right to privacy here just removes it from your ability to view it. So even if you aren't deleting things from your pages or from your networks, it can go away without your control. So what can you do? What are the chances of this happening? We did actually a study over many years. We studied 500 public agencies and school districts, 10 million social media posts in 2018, and of those, close to 760,000 are now deleted. which actually comes out to be close to 1 out of 13 of every social media comment disappearing from the network. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's kind of a misconception that if something is on social media, it's on the internet forever. That simply is not true. The good news is you do have options, and let's talk through them. Basically, it comes down to three choices for you. One, you can rely on the networks and say, well, I've seen that the Twitter and Facebook allows me to download my content. Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. Two, you have the ability to actually take screenshots yourself. You can sit every time you see a new post come in, use your computer, take a screenshot of that, file it away. And finally, the other option is that you can use archiving software to do this work for you. There are trade-offs for each of these. The things you need to consider when you're deciding what's best for you are what trade-offs you want to make. The first one is really about real-time capture. We've talked about how quickly things can happen. I know Dr. Rios mentioned that it's sometimes if you don't get the scores of the basketball game up soon enough, another game has been played and that content is no longer relevant. So things are changing moment to moment. And if you're relying on a social network, they're showing you what is there now. You might get an indication that something has been edited, but not necessarily what was there before. And the same thing can happen with taking screenshots. Unless you're sitting there constantly, second by second, minute by minute with your computer opening and taking screenshots, there's stuff you might miss. When you talk about deleted, edited, or hidden comments, you run into the same problems. You're not going to find that information is retained for you on the social networks. And if you take screenshots, again, the odds of you missing something are pretty high. You have to expand out comment threads and just there's physical limitations about and be able to do that quickly. The other thing that comes up is the metadata. Now, metadata is the data about the data. So it's not just the content of the post itself, but who posted it, at what time, from what location, whether or not it was hidden, whether or not it had been edited. All of that information that lies underneath that isn't displayed on the screen can't be captured when it comes to taking screenshots. The other thing that's limiting is the ability to actually search any of this data. You have search tools on the social networks, but if you've ever tried them yourself, you will find they can be very frustrating very quickly. When you're taking screenshots, imagine on top of having to sit and click and click and click and click and click just to take the screenshots, now you have to meticulously file and tag all of those records so you can call them up again. Doesn't really seem possible. And finally, the big thing, especially recently, as these networks have become more robust, they've started threading conversations. And so the replies cannot just be to the top level post, but replies can be to other replies, and that gets nested inside. That detail can get lost when you're relying on the networks themselves. And if you're taking screenshots, unless you're expanding out every thread, you're not going to get that context. This is why archiving software does all of these things for you. They connect with the networks through the API to get that near real-time capture. We get records of things that have been changed or hidden or deleted. You get all of that metadata behind it. It's easy to search, and a good archiving software can put together the conversations. And it really depends on the vendor that you use. Okay, so I want to go a little deeper. I think I covered this, but I want to go a little deeper into replaying Reconstruction. When you just search for results across your social media networks, you might get kind of a mixed bag of search results, especially on Twitter. They're not necessarily threaded. But what you need is that context, that conversation. You need to be able to replay it and pull it back together kind of as it happened. And so you can see that back and forth response. And so this is what we mean just in general for replay and reconstruction. What you find when you download data from the networks is you just kind of get a dump of data and it doesn't necessarily piece that back together for you. So this is something you want to look at if you're looking for social media archiving. Everything I just talked about comes together in this table when we look at cost versus risk comparison. And again, this is your trade-off. This is the decision you need to make for your agency, for your school district, what makes sense for you, right? So if you are very risk tolerant, you might say, you know what, I'm just going to rely on the network. Something that is important to note there, when you do download content, say from Twitter, what you're downloading is what you have produced, not necessarily what the public has turned back to you. And if you go back to that screen before with the records laws, if you dig into your records laws, what you're going to find is a common phrase amongst all of them is it's all content produced, transmitted, or received. So every time that parent makes a comment back to you asking about why the bus route changed, that becomes a public record. So you have a pretty high risk of non-compliance if you're relying on social networks, which is just going to give you the information that you put out and not the comments that are coming in. The same thing can happen with taking screenshots because a lot can be missed and can be very hard to find. An amount of effort required, yeah, there's really very little effort just to let the networks do their thing. Again, you are taking risk in your hands because they're not guaranteeing that they're going to provide this content for you. Taking screenshots, we've been over this a couple times. That's a lot of clicking. And then finally, archiving software. These are low effort and a very low risk of non-compliance. Now let's talk about the cost. Sure, it's free on the surface to rely on the networks until that first request comes in that you can't fulfill. The lawsuits can get very costly quickly. Taking screenshots, that's also free to you unless you take into account the cost of your time to actually do that and manage those records. Archiving software might surprise you. It's actually much lower than people expect. Typically, we see most agencies can be covered for under $5,000 annual, complete coverage of all of their networks and their compliance. So that's a little cost versus risk comparison. It is important to know that you do have options. As Dr. Rios pointed out, at this point, social media is pretty much a must for your agency. We have seen, in the 6 years I've been with Archive Social, agencies across the country receiving records requests on an almost daily basis. One thing you might think, well, I never got one that asked me for Facebook, but if you've ever gotten a request that says all communication about the change in bus routes, guess what? If you communicated that on one of your social media networks, that's included in that request, even if that network hasn't been explicitly described. Finally, taking action now before it's a problem will pay off for your agency and staff. Don't wait until it's a problem. Get ahead of it and make sure you have that peace of mind and you have that assurance that you are being in compliance and you can turn back and look at the records of what you've done and what's been done with you. Thanks. We're happy to hop on the phone and help you out with the requirements, but I do want to make sure that I turn it back over to Jessica and Dr. Rios so we can answer some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you'd like to be contacted about understanding public record laws, finding out who is near you that might be archiving, hear about records requests in legal situations, or learn about some of the resources that Archive Social can provide you, go ahead and fill out the poll that should be on your screen now. As people are filling it out, let's go ahead and get to some questions. A lot have come in both before the webinar and during. So we're going to start off with Dr. Rios. How do you successfully juggle multiple social media platforms?
Successfully? That's hold on, I'm about to cough. Give me 1 second. I apologize. It's difficult. There are a lot of tools that you can use. I did mention, we use some third-party tools. Our website, for example, our web hosting provider, if we post a story, we can push it to Facebook and Twitter at the same time. Anything that you can use to connect those, because sometimes you want the same message going across. So we do that. And again, we're only talking about two. The main ones for our district. I've got a district Facebook page and a district Twitter page. So maintaining those two isn't horribly difficult. And the way that I craft a message for Facebook is going to look a little different than Twitter, simply because of the limitation on characters. But to me, and that looks different than the stories I post on our website. Facebook to me is a lot friendlier. It can be a little bit more collegial, a little bit more joking. Twitter, you've got to get the message out there quick. We have a lot of teachers using Twitter now. I don't know if I mentioned that enough. And so the ability just to go in and retweet what other people are tweeting already has made my job a lot easier, because our baseball team is tweeting, our basketball team is tweeting. Almost every teacher at the elementary school has a class account. And so I can retweet that stuff. So it's much easier for us to get information out. It takes a lot of time, and there's still some other things I'd like to do. I'd like to build a calendar so that I'm sure that during this month I tackle X, Y, and Z, or maybe every Monday it's a Motivation Monday message that goes out. But that's where I need some additional help, and that's where hopefully a student body can help me in that regard.
Excellent. So some great information there about kind of the different purposes of social media platforms, because it is difficult to monitor each one and make sure that you're posting accurate and appropriate information for each one. Alex, any insights?
I think that was pretty good coverage for that, yeah.
So this one actually came in through the question function, which is, how did you get buy-in from your leadership for Archive Social?
Well, it wasn't very difficult to do. One is it's required. We knew we needed to start doing it. I looked at various options and we kind of hunted around. Archive Social came very highly recommended. And so it was really just a matter of looking at budget, making sure everything fell within our realm, and it did. So it wasn't a hard sell at all. You know, it's that return on investment. Again, you hope it's something you never have to use, but you know how much you're gonna have to man hours and that sort of thing you would have to spend and pay for additional costs to go back and find all this stuff, when it'd be much easier just to click a button. So it was, to me, a very easy sell.
Excellent. So this one would really go out to both of you. When communities post wrong or misleading information about a district policy or practice, how do you feel about posting the correct info on the district website or Facebook? Not directly a reply to the post, but providing what is correct rather than let uninformed or emotionally charged replies by people who think they know what is correct.
Personally, I think if a parent voices concern on Facebook, you have to respond. That's my gut. I never ignore a post completely. You know, spending I was blessed to spend 12 years on campus as either an assistant principal or principal, and believe it or not, during those 12 years, I dealt with angry parents every now and then. It's hard to imagine, but ignoring them and simply posting the information on your website is kind of like saying you should have looked here to begin with, and it's, to me, adding fuel to the fire. I think you could respond to that parent, say, so we're sorry about the miscommunication. Here's a link to our online policy that we hope will set the record straight. Feel free to contact me if you have any further questions. That way the public sees that you're responding in a positive manner, and they also see where they can find that information to begin with. But I think there are some angry responses that I have. I say there's some that you just realize, okay, I'm not going to make this person happy. And so there's no need to respond. But when it's something you can respond to fairly easily and redirect them in the right direction, I think it's worth a response.
I think I would absolutely agree with that. In fact, some of what I consider our best practices shared by our customers is always is that you have to meet people where they are. You wouldn't hear a question in your auditorium and then walk down to the media center, sit down at a table and answer it when no one is there, right? You'd answer it where it is. And I think that the approach that you suggested is absolutely one of the best approaches, is to say, hey, give a brief response that kind of sums it up, but then points to the place where that information is going to be consistently correct, because that also gives you the opportunity to direct people to resources they may not realize exist. They may not know where to go on your website for that information. So you're kind of doubling down. You're being responsive. You're putting the correct information out there, and you're pointing that individual and others to, hey, here's a great place you can check for this resources in the future.
Yeah, and that has happened to me. A great follow-up to my response. The question I asked myself, because I'm also our webmaster, is why couldn't they find that on the website? Did I hide that too deeply? And maybe it's up to me to put that in a spot they can find information more easily.
Oh.
Absolutely. So Alex, this one popped in earlier. How realistic is an actual records request for schools?
It's pretty realistic. I mean, we handle them fairly frequently. Do you want to show us or give an example here? And I think everyone at this, unfortunately, what we hear about in the news almost daily now, and I wish this weren't the case. I'm a parent to an elementary school student myself. Is we do see on social media, it seems to be the go-to place where threats are being made in school, for one thing. And we've also encountered cases, and this could be as simple as, one of the things that a lot of school districts I work with are concerned about is the FERPA, the right to privacy for the students. And there have been cases where a photo has been posted of a student where the parent has said, hey, I don't have permission for that. And even if you take it down, having record and just showing that you've been responsive to the request to take it down is pretty important. A couple of concrete examples I can give you that have come up recently after being blocked on social media. This is for Parma City School District in Ohio. They basically had blocked a community member on their social media channels, and that community member is now suing them, the school board, the administrative specialist, and the superintendent for fees and damages. The superintendent of Parma City School District had asked the administrative specialist to block a student's parent for criticizing the district, and the parent is suing for violation of the First Amendment. And regardless of who's in the right or wrong here, the important reason why to have these records is to tell the actual story, and it doesn't become well, they said this and they said that, and everyone has to just kind of rely on their memory or what they think they saw. When you have the actual records and those records are irrefutable, the conversation is over very quickly. And so that's kind of a good example of how this comes about and how these FOIA records get used in real life.
Absolutely, and we see that a lot here at Archive Social. So this one is a little bit more specific, Dr. Rios, but I'd love to hear your opinion. We have a bond on the April ballot. Any tips for finding the balance of making sure our voters are informed, but not going overboard with our bond information on social media? How often should I post something?
I saw that question. Interesting. I think as long as you need to inform your constituents about the bond, but I don't think you want to just stop all other posts that you have. Continue to pepper it with the great things that your kids are doing, and post as regularly as you do on all of that, and then just kind of pepper it in there every now and then. I would always, if it's for, I think any bond, and we're blessed in our district. I told you we're a unique school district because we're on a military installation. We don't have bonds here. We get federal monies directly. But I think any district that's trying to sell a bond has to tell a story about how is this going to help the students. And I think if you couch it that way and can give examples of, here's what the bond would do for kids in this school with pictures of the kids in the school. Social media is social. And people like to see pictures, they like to see images of kids and that sort of thing. So I think the message for your bond that goes through social media should be crafted different than the message that's on your website or in the newspaper, and it really needs to focus more on our most valuable asset, and that's our kiddos.
So
I hope that helps.
Absolutely, I think so. I hope that that question came in before our webinar, so hopefully that speaker is on, or that question creator is on and heard that. So what are some of the best strategies you found to attract volunteers and others to your district?
I think just letting them know the opportunities that exist. And the other thing that has helped us is when you have volunteer opportunities, when you post that on social media, is to give them a specific call to action. So we need volunteers to stuff bags for whatever XYZ. Please email Dr. Cerna at and include that in the tweet so that they know exactly what steps they have to take. If you just say we need volunteers without a specific call to action, they're not going to know what to do, and they may not respond to it. I've on occasion, I think of things at the last minute. I'm a great idea guy. I'm not a wonderful planner. So I have very often just turned to Facebook and said, parents, this was over the summer. Are your kids bored? Because I need help unpacking Chromebooks tomorrow. I need at least 10 kids. I'll feed them pizza. And within, email me, and I supply my email address. And within about 30 minutes, I have to get back on Facebook and say, I've got enough volunteers already. So I think just that, make it fun. You can be a little looser on the social media and have some, I think I even in the summer said, oops, I forgot the Chromebooks were coming and they're here. I need help, make it fun. I think I even put a picture of myself looking frantic. And then call to action. Exactly what do they need to do to volunteer?
I think that's fantastic advice. Sometimes we do get it stuck into our brains of just, oh, here's the information, and then let somebody kind of do the legwork for us,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they'll come if they're excited. Well, giving them kind of that bridge to meet us is excellent advice. So our next question, would you respond to a concern, not on your Facebook page, but like on a community page?
A page that you don't control.
That's an excellent question. I have responded through my personal Facebook or my own Twitter account. I don't use our Facebook page to follow a lot of other people. If you looked at FSHISD, we don't follow that many other people. So I'm not getting those kinds of alerts a lot. If I saw something grossly inaccurate, then I might, but more than likely, I would just respond to that. What's funny is in our district, again, we're small, it's a small community. I will post something and it just says FSHISD and I tweet it or I put it on Facebook and parents will reply, Dr. Rios, can you tell us more about this? They know who the man behind the curtain is. So I'm not afraid to respond either with my personal social media. I don't think I've ever responded as a district on somebody else's account.
Mm-hmm. I can add some information here. This comes up a lot with our customers, and I've heard a number of different approaches. I think all of which have merit. One, as you mentioned, it is possible if there's particularly on a Facebook group, to be invited as a page to be a participant in the group, and that does have its risks because you are kind of wading into. Especially if the group is private, you might be sharing information that's not then publicly available elsewhere. But one of the things you can do if you do want to engage and you do want to participate there is reach out to the various administrators and say, hey, I would like a chance to respond if possible and build those relationships. And that administrator may reach out to you and say, hey, do you kind of want to weigh in on this question? This really is better for you. And if you are responding from a personal profile, it's really, really important to be very clear that who you are, what your role is with the organization you're representing, and that whether or not you are representing that organization or no, you're representing yourself as a private citizen. So making sure those boundaries are very clear is important up front, but you can actually, especially in a smaller community, get a lot of legs from building bridges with the administrators of those individual groups, so you don't have to monitor them all the time, but they do know you're a resource and that you are willing to contribute when needed and when asked. And then invite people to the group. Hey, this conversation is great. Would somebody like to come and join and have this conversation on our pages so more people can participate and see it?
Mm-hmm.
We did have, there was a Facebook group once that said, the name of the group was, you went to Cole High School if, and that was the name of the group. And they were posting stuff about our faculty. Most of it was hilarious. But there was some that they kind of got a little carried away and could have hurt some feelings. I found out who the administrator was. It happened to be a graduate from the high school when I was still principal there, and I personally messaged them and said, "Hey, this is cute. We know we're family here, and we're sharing cute stories. But this one path you went down with Mr. So and so," and she immediately said, "We're going to stop that. We apologize." And so, you're right. Making those personal connections to the administrators is very helpful.
Our next question is, how do you know all the accounts within the district to retweet/share?
We're small, so one of my instructional technologists just put out a Google form and said, if you have a classroom Twitter account or a club or organization, please fill out this form with the name of your group and your URL. And we created lists and we just followed those lists. We also made those lists available to the rest of our faculty and said, if you want to follow everybody at the elementary, here's a list with all the elementary accounts. Here's all the lists for Cole. So we were just able to share those internally. And so we were able to monitor all those very quickly through Twitter. We don't have anyone with school related Facebook pages. The only Facebook pages are the district and the K-Cub News.
And you don't have to be small to do that. We work with a district that has 138 different pages, 111 different account owners, and they actually provided us with a registration form that sounds very similar to the Google form, just to get everyone to let the district level know, hey, here are the pages that we're managing, to just kind of help keep sure that there's some oversight there.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So everyone, we are starting to get to the top of the hour. I'd like to thank Alex Bowman and Dr. Roland Rios for their time. And I would
My
also
pleasure.
like to
Thank you so much.
also like to thank all of you for joining us today. Again, we will have follow-up with materials within the next 48 hours. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to respond to the email that helped you register. Thank you all and have a great day.